Hey y'all, you know how much I love a good book stack, so I decided to take all of my book stack tutorials and put them together in one big video, all except for one of them, because for some reason, YouTube doesn't want me to download my own video. I don't know how to fix that. It's probably something technical, and I don't have a teenager around to tell me how to do that. So I'll just add a link for that video in the description. Most of the videos I left just as I had made them, except for number 5, and that was the very first book stack I ever made, and it was my 4th YouTube video. So the audio was really, really bad. I mean, you could barely hear me. I got like 15 thumbs down on that video. So I just took all of the audio out and added a little bit of music. You'll have to just watch instead of listening to how I tell you to put it together, which we all know is probably a better way to learn from Heather anyway, since what I'm trying to say in here doesn't always come out here the way it should. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope if you create your own book stacks, you would share them on my Facebook group called Spindle Mountain Trading Post. We would love to see your creations. So without further ado, let's see how I made 6 book stacks and that other one. Book stack number 1.
Messed up my manicure.
Sorry, Mom. There are 3 reasons books sell at Dollar Tree. Number 1, the books are made for Dollar Tree and stores that sell books for cheap. Number 2, books that don't sell in the bookstore, so they were just flops. And number 3, books with mistakes, like a missing page or something was printed upside down or they had to revise something. I have gotten some really good books that were best sellers at the Dollar Tree. You just have to look for those. Now, I'm not a big book painter, but because these were number 2, they were flops, all I did was pick these out because of how they fit together, and I didn't even care what they were called. I painted right over them. I hope that book purists will be okay with that, because even Dollar Tree destroys stuff that doesn't sell. So I'm pretty sure I saved these flops from the landfill. I painted them with gypsy green after Mom painted them with her paint from, I don't know where she got it, Hobby Lobby, because when I got home, some of the paint had scratched off, and I'm really into this gypsy green. I love it. Right here, I am sealing it with Debbie's DIY Crystal Clear Chandelier Liquid Patina. And see right there where I took the brush strokes up? That's so that all of the strokes go the same direction. And I didn't worry about sealing it where the book will stack on top of it. Oh, earlier when you saw me put the gold on the pages, I'm not sure why I put that in that order, but who knows why I do half the stuff I do, am I right? I used Rub and Buff, and I think I used gold leaf. I tried the antique gold and I didn't like it, but when I got done, you can tell that one of the books has that. I think it actually looks good though. It's kind of sets it apart so they don't all look the exact same. So right here, I'm adding an orange stem from the same book I used in the last project, Clementine, and it didn't fit. So you can see right here where I'm fussy cutting. That means you cut right around the edges of different parts. So there's some scroll work I cut out, and right here I'm cutting out the words or the banner, and I just move it around until it looks like it fits. And this is the scroll work. I try it in lots of different places, and I continue doing this with different items from this same picture until everything fit. And I don't do anything to my fabric beforehand to get it ready. I do wash it, but I wash it in my washer with my regular laundry, and I don't do anything special. I don't seal it or anything, and I've never had a problem getting it on here. Now, I did seal it with Debbie's liquid patina, but you can use other sealers, and also people give them baths. I believe it's a vinegar bath. You can Google that and find out. There's different ways to get your transfers to stick to fabric, and there are so many neat things out there that people make with them, so you might want to check that out. Before I did the bindings, I thought I knew where my strap would go that holds these together, and I was wrong. I should have really placed everything together more, but this was kind of just where the pieces fit. Like right here, I'm using some gold that's left over from a gilded transfer book from last year, and it just had lots of different pieces, and I'm not trying to get the whole picture on it. I'm just putting it down using my fingernail to get different bits of it so that it will kind of spread out more. And I did the same thing on the other end, and then I did that a little bit on the other books so that they would all have a little bit of gold. You can see here I just sped it up so you can tell what I did. I used Titebond Quick and Thick not only to attach the books to each other, I also glued down the covers to the pages with it and just put a little bit in between some of the pages. And I used it on the back of the piece of drop cloth on which I put the transfer. I brushed it out so that it went all the way up to the places where I frayed. And then I just flipped it over and put it right on the book. I had forgotten to put the sealer on this book, so not sure what happened with that, but it worked out good. I just lifted up the little frayed pieces when I sealed it, and I tried not to get as much of the liquid patina on the fray, and it worked really good. You'll see. I mean, this thing is stinking cute. The edge of drop cloth has a hem that's folded over a couple of times, so it's pretty thick. I cut right next to that, just about 1.5 inches or so, and then I ripped it and I frayed just that little tiny bit. I didn't want it to stick out a lot, so I kept trimming it because some of the little, I don't know, the way it was woven wasn't straight. It wasn't even with the hem, so I had to keep doing that a little bit, but you can see it just has a tiny bit of fray, and I love that. I tried this different ways, but this was the best way, and these are just little tacks for upholstering, and I love how this turned out. Oh my goodness, you guys. So cute. You can do these like crisscrossed, like from the corners. I tried it with this one and it just didn't work with how I put the pictures, but I highly recommend before you do this, you place everything together to figure out where you're going to put your ribbon or your rope or whatever you're tying your books together with, because you want to be able to see all of your designs. Because I only did one coat of Debbie's paint over the stuff my mom put on it, you can see her stuff underneath after I put the liquid patina on. It's kind of streaky and I love it. I decided not to do a bow, and that meant I'm done. Isn't this amazing? Bookstack number 2. Have the gilded transfer book called Athenaeum. This is inspired by vintage book covers and interior pages, including The Bird by Jules Michelet and a Pride and Prejudice cover by Jane Austen. Rooted in the idea of an Athenaeum, a place devoted to learning, culture, and the quiet exchange of ideas, this collection evokes the romance of old libraries, well-loved pages, and stories passed from hand to hand. It brings together complete compositions, typography, florals, frames, and decorative elements drawn from antique book design. Frames, borders, and corners are thoughtfully nested together for versatility, making this set ideal for book-themed projects and library-inspired decor. Spine elements are designed to pair with the bookish mold, making it easy to create detailed book stacks and literary accents. And that's exactly what I'm doing. Bookish features a collection of classic book spines with ornate detailing designed for building book stacks and adding a smidge of literary brilliance to your decor. Each spine is cast as a separate element, giving you the flexibility to customize your book stack. I was so excited to make this project that I didn't film everything. It's almost like it made me revert back to when I first started making YouTube videos, but I think you can get the gist of what I'm doing. I started by taking two books outside and spray painting the covers and just around the inside of the covers black. I then held that part back and squeezed the pages together with my fingers while I used my other hand to spray paint the pages gold. I promise next video I will do one with silver and black, and I'll have my sweet husband film it for me so I won't forget to show you how I did that part. Where we are catching up now is gluing on the molds that I've already made that I didn't film. I spray painted them gold and let just the paint dry, but not the mold. And I'm using my Type Bond Quick and Thick glue to put them onto the book. This book was a little bit smaller than the shortest one of the molds, so I just cut the mold underneath where that little, I don't know, it's like little lines that they made indentions with, and then I pushed the bottom piece up to that. I thought that would look better than just cutting off the end and not having a design at the end. I pressed down the sides of the binding all the way down the book so that it didn't have like an abrupt edge. Also, I put my palm on this quite a few times and it kind of made it have a more leathery appearance. So I guess that's one of those mistakes that turned out to be a blessing and not a mistake. And I will do that again. Okay, we're going back in time, and I'm so sorry this is messed up that way, but I didn't know what order to do these in. I've never made anything quite like this. I've done book stacks, but this is totally different. So I did the mold. I cut it with a knife that's not super sharp because I don't want to cut my mold. And then I put some of that clay back in the center, made it super smooth. So you see there's two books that are stacked up, right? So this is going on the bottom book. So I had to take them apart, and you can see, I'm going to do a close up right here. This is the first transfer I did, and I did a horrible job. It wasn't dry. The paint was still wet. So you can see all those white parts. And of course, my logical way of thinking was, oh, I can fix that. So I kept going, and no, I couldn't fix it. It really was messed up. So I decided this would be the book on the bottom, and I found a smaller book to go on top. I put the mold on the first one before I painted it. Ugh. So I had to take it outside and figure out a way to spray paint it and not get too much paint on the black. But you know what? I oversprayed and I liked that too. So let's move back to the second book again, which is now second or third. Anyway, I figured out how I wanted this cover to go on it, and I added some words down at the bottom, and it went on very easily. I was pleasantly surprised, and I bet I checked it about 15 times before I even went a half an inch. You can't see me here, but I'm like leaning over and looking through it and seeing if it's clear and if all the transfer came off, and it did. So that was a blessing too. When I figured out where I wanted this to be placed, I put my fingers on the sides of the very top of the cover. So on the binding, it comes over and it has a little indentation, and then it goes up again to the flat part of the cover. And that's the point I started from on the left. And I measured over to the right and put it right in the center of that area. So if it looks a little bit off from far away, that's why. So I didn't notice how scratched up the black had gotten until I was putting the transfers on. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just go over it with a little paintbrush. But then I realized, you know what? This is an old looking book. It's not, it's a brand new book but that I actually found on the way to the dumpster at an auction. And I want it to look old. So there you go. Now it does because I left it out and it got scratched up. I decided to add some rub and buff, and I will leave a link for some that I found on Amazon that was a pretty good price for 5 of them in different colors. I applied it first with my fingers and put big chunks here and there, and then I went over that with a brush. and I tried to make it go in different places so that it had a bigger spot, and I went heavier on the corners as well. I kept switching back and forth between my finger and my brush, trying to just kind of mush it to go in. I wanted it to look like over the years people had handled it so much that the gilding kind of got messed up, or maybe it was black and it wiped away and showed more gilding. I just wanted it to look old. But now that edge where I told you I measured from, it looks a little too perfect. So I took my brush and just ran it all the way up and down that a little bit and smeared it a tiny bit too. And I did the same thing where the mold is attached to the book. Okay, so if my directions here confused you, don't feel bad because they confused me too. I don't know what the heck I was doing and I'm so sorry, but I promise next time I will make another book and I will have all the directions properly laid out. But for today, here's what I got, and I am way more than okay with it. Bookstack number 3. I'm starting with this gem book that got very damaged on the pages and the top. The back and the binding, though, were in really good shape, and I thought maybe I could match the purple. The second one is this DHEA Breakthrough. I have no idea what this book is, but there were about 5 of those in the trash. And the last one is a book I painted earlier. I don't know what it is, but I checked then to make sure it wasn't valuable. To go with this, I have some spare Tupperware. Don't throw things out sometimes. Maybe it's not Tupperware. I'm not sure what brand it is, but I only have the lid to this butter dish. And then I had my sweet husband take it outside with the 2 top books, and he made a hole so I can make a planter. Okay, y'all, I don't have a lot of original ideas. This is one of them. I am so excited. So let's make us a book stack, shall we? Out in his shop, my sweet husband used the top of the butter dish to find out where the 4 corners would be on the center of the top book. And in those 4 places, he used his drill press to make a pretty big hole. It needs to be big so that he could fit the blade of his jigsaw in it. Well, our jigsaw broke. Now, you can get these kind of cheap. This was less than $30 on Amazon, and it has a 4.7-star rating, and there's some that are cheaper than that. He's using his scroll saw. Now, the problem with the scroll saw is the blade is attached on the top and the bottom. So right here, he's showing you how he disassembled the top part, and then he put the blade up through the bottom of the book. And then he used that to saw on the mark he made with a pencil in between all 4 holes. You can also use a hand saw for this, but it's going to be hard because that's a lot of pages to go through. Oh, and instead of a drill press, you can use a regular drill, but you'd want to put your books into some kind of vise because they'll slip around a lot. I'm painting this in the color Garden Sage from Debbie's DIY Cottage Colors. It's a 3-in-1 paint with the primer, the paint, and the sealer, and it only took 1 coat. The secret to getting good coverage with this paint is to make sure it's mixed very well. For that, I used this submersible blender, but I also have this one for my shop, and I used the milk frother attachment. Now, Amazon does have this rechargeable milk frother, but it's not quite as strong, so you can't use it in the bigger cans, like maybe anything smaller than a half a gallon. In the description, I will leave a link for those. If you buy anything from Amazon by using my link to get there, they will give me a small compensation, but won't change your price. I didn't film mixing the paint in every color, but here it is in purple, and you can see the swirl right there. And when I push it down in the bottom and get all the way around the sides, you can see how light it is compared to when I started. And I just run my finger down that milk frother to get the paint off, and then I kind of tap it on the rim so I won't get it everywhere. I'm using green paint for the center book, and for the other 2, I'm going to use 2 different shades of purple. I loved purple when I was growing up, and then I just kind of fell out of love with it. But then I married my sweet husband, and he told me about when he was a little boy, he used to watch his big sister watching the Osmonds And all my sweet husband could remember was that Donny Osmond wore purple socks. And all my sweet husband could remember is that Donny Osmond always wore purple socks, and he thinks that's why my sister-in-law loves purple. So of course purple is back in my good graces now, because Donny Osmond's purple socks remind me of how cute my husband probably was when he was a little boy. For the top book, I used Plum Pudding from Debbie's DIY Cottage Colors, and for the bottom book, I wanted to leave the binding with that silver writing, but I couldn't find a purple to match. So I went to my friend Sherry's house and she looked through all her paints. We found two that when we mixed them together, it worked, but when I painted the book, it didn't look right. So I just painted over the binding. And you know what? I'm really glad I did that, because that is what took me to a different step than I originally planned. And I love how these turned out. Oh, can't wait for you to see it. I wish I could tell you what color that purple was, or those purples were. I don't remember. They were just Apple Barrel or something from Hobby Lobby or maybe Walmart. I sealed the bottom book with a flat gloss. I sealed the bottom book with flat Rust-Oleum 2x Ultra Cover in matte clear. Then I glued the books together using Titebond Quick and Thick. You can pick that up at any hardware store, but I'll also leave a link for it in the description. I'm also going to leave a link for the rub and buff I used. I found this little trio and it was a good price. But remember, just because I send you to Amazon doesn't mean you have to buy what I recommend. Go search, look at the reviews, get exactly what you want. The pages of this book were really gross. They weren't like moldy, they were just dirty. So I tried to clean them off and they got really wet, and you can see how they're kind of wobbly there. I decided to paint them with the silver rub and buff, and that worked very well. I think it would look really good with gold too. Moving on to funny story number 2. IOD, bless their hearts, always chooses names that I cannot pronounce, and I am not the only one. So for those stockists who cannot pronounce these words, they gave us a pronunciation key in an audio form. What they didn't include was spelling out the letters in English so we know what those words are. I think this is called something like Saoun, Saoun, but I'm calling it St. Owen. So St. Owen has these cute little pictures in it. They look kind of like little markings from a book company, and there are 3 of them. There are also some really great labels and words that I thought would look good on the bindings of these books, and I cut out things that were just a little too big and cut off smaller parts of them to put on the different books. So even though they are 3 different colors and sizes, they still look like they could be from the same publisher and maybe even from the same series. The only thing I knew about the for sure placement was the little tiny designs. So I put those on first, and I just used my fingernail. I didn't use my applicator stick. I'm not going to show you how to apply transfers in a detailed lesson right now, but I have lots of videos that do teach you how. Try to remember to link some of those in the description. When I did these, if they were too wide for the binding, I just kind of tucked them in between the book below and then folded it over the top and just kind of rolled it over the edge. And I started on the edge where it went over and just worked my way down to where it was tucked in between the books. If I couldn't get my fingernail in there to rub the transfer off, I think I used a pair of scissors. The transfer stick was still just a little bit too thick to fit down in there. For the words, I held the different designs in front of each binding to see which ones looked best, and I tried to remember that I needed lighter colors on the darker purple, and I needed darker colors on the lighter green. I hope that makes sense, and the lighter purple. After I applied these, I used my finger to burnish them, and that way I could feel if there was a catch or something and maybe it was going to peel off. St. Owen has a lot of different styles of writing in the form of sentences, so I just cut those down and mixed and matched and put them together where I thought they looked good. I took the same approach with the labels. I thought I would put a label in each book, but it ended up I only did 2 books. I did the bottom and the top, and I used one label that I cut apart so that they're kind of tied together, and then I did one full label on the top book, and the top book was wider, so it was easier to find one that fit. Because my goal is to make this something people can put fresh flowers in, I know there's going to be water around it, so I did seal it with Debbie's Liquid Patina in Crystal Clear Chandelier. I was not able to seal the inside where all the pages are cut apart, so I think whoever buys it is going to have to be careful, and I'll make a note about that and put it with the book so when they buy it, they'll see that and they'll know. But I'm telling you what, I made such a pretty arrangement for this. I don't know if anybody will ever want to take them out and put real flowers in. I'm just saying. So let's jump right into how that came about. I cut some old floral foam. This is the hard kind. It's not that soft kind you can get now at Hobby Lobby or any craft store. This is that old hard stuff. I probably found it on the side of the road in an arrangement. And I'm telling you right now, that's a knife that will cut all the things. I gathered a whole bunch of different florals and greenery so that I could see maybe what would look prettiest with this. I mostly stuck with mauves and light purples. There are a couple of deep purples too. The most, wait, the biggest flowers I started with, I got at the thrift store, but I'm also using a lot of flower heads I bought on Amazon, and I will leave a link for those. When you go buy those, make sure you look at the pictures that show the sizes and the styles. I have bought the wrong ones. I thought I was buying little tiny ones that were like as big as my fingernail. Nope, they were as big as the palm of my hand. I'm just gluing those onto floral wire. You can wrap the floral wire with floral tape, and that will make it look nicer. These are going to be hidden in the arrangement, and I don't think anybody's going to see that, so I just glued them on and left it at that. I started with these 3 flowers, and I worked away from them. The next step was smaller flowers in different shades and different colors like the mauves and the purples, and then I added some greenery. I went back and looked at the floral and rearranged some of it and added a little bit more, and then I added some white accent florals. Then I added a little bit more greenery and I added some more florals to balance everything out. This took quite a while, and I want you to see the whole thing, but it's a very long film. So we're just going to speed it up between 5 and 10 times actual speed, and I will see you back here when I'm ready to show you the next step. At the base of the arrangement, you could still see the foam, and it's pretty ugly, so I needed to cover it up. For this part, I took the entire arrangement, including the foam, out of the butter lid. That's because I don't want any of this glue to get on the butter lid. I want this to be able to still be lifted out, so if somebody wants to put fresh flowers in it, they can do that easily. I'm using reindeer moss I bought at Dollar Tree. This stuff is in very small pieces. It's just little bits and pieces. So you have to put glue on it and then a bunch of the reindeer moss and you press it down. You might want to wear a rubber glove or one of those thumb protectors or finger protectors when you're pushing this down. My glue doesn't get very hot, so I'm not concerned about that. I did not burn myself. Thank you very much for your concern. Next, I need to make sure the book stack stays together and that especially the bottom book is really closed tightly so you can't see where the pages are wobbly. For that, I'm using this old belt that I found in a trunk I bought at an auction for $1. Y'all, there was a whole trousseau in there and then some. There were baby items, there was stuff from the honeymoon. It was crazy how much stuff I found in this huge trunk. The belt's a little too big, and instead of cutting it, I'm just going to wrap it around the bottom real tight, and then I will smush it together. But that won't hold the book stack together. For that, I'm going to my trusty knot tire, my sweet husband.
You need to tie a bowline.
Of course I do.
See, you put a loop. The rabbit goes up through the hole, around the tree, and back down the hole.
Okay.
That's your knot that will not slip.
Okay. He wrapped the entire cord around the book stack and then he put one end through that bowline knot. Next, he pulled it super, super tight. In fact, he pulled it so tight he didn't know if he could get the cord back up there around the edge of the book, but he did it. Now you have to make sure you wrap it around and pull it back through itself, and that makes another knot when it gets back to the bowline knot. and that's it. I'm telling you what, this thing wasn't just secure, it was secured so intensely that there's no way those pages will make the book's bow. I'm going to add that belt over it so you won't see the ugly knot. Even though it's a pretty knot in his eyes, it's still, just a piece of old rope. And not the pretty rope, but the nylon kind that you tie your fishing boat up with. So I'm adding some glue with my glue gun. And by the way, I use Gorilla brand hot glue sticks. I think they're the best. I fixed this so that the flap where the edge is hangs over the side of the books. And where it was too big, I just gathered it up and added glue and gathered some more and added more glue. I had to have this belt on there to cover up the rope that I had to have to keep the book stack together, but it was beautiful. I love how it turned out. The only problem is now it's not balanced in the front, so I need something else. I found another belt in the same trunk, and I washed all of this, by the way, in bleach. I know that's not recommended, but I needed to make sure they got clean, and I only spent $1 on the whole lot, so it was worth the gamble, and it worked. I tied this in a regular bow like you tie your shoelaces, and then I frayed the ends and I glued that down, and I glued some of the other parts of the bow down to make it look perfect. Now you tell me, is this not your favorite book stack too? I want to make one of these for myself, and I will put real flowers in it. Book stack number 4. This book is called How to Live with Diabetes, and it's from the 70s, so I'm kind of thinking that if someone has diabetes, this is not anything dear to their heart. And I don't think it's anything someone in the 2020s would want to use in their battle against diabetes. So we aren't going to feel guilty about painting this book. The receipt was still in this book. It's from 1980 at Sam's Club, and they paid $14.95. They bought 4 of these books, so I'm thinking they were gifts for their doctor friends. But they were about to get thrown away, so I'm not going to feel guilty about painting one of them. The thing is, I painted it and I lost it. And guess what I can't find? The footage of the next book I painted to replace it. Oh, good grief. I pulled that one out of the dumpster, so I'm not going to worry about painting it either, but I'll show you that one a little bit later. I love this book. I was really disappointed that the outside is in such bad condition, but the binding is great. It reads, Smart and Lang, Smart's Handbook of Effective Writing. Harper. The first printing was in 1920. This one was printed in 1943 by Harper and Brothers. I'm wondering if that later became HarperCollins. My biggest consideration with this book stack was that the smallest book was on top and each book got wider and taller as it goes down, like a pyramid. I love faded burlap from Debbie's Design Diary, and this can is almost empty. I can't believe it's lasted this long. I won't bore you with most of the painting, but I did want to show you a couple techniques. This is how I paint a straight line, and I actually learned this technique from a friend of mine who painted house interiors. I was so shocked he didn't use tape when he painted, and he showed me how to use the brush. I don't know if I can explain it, but you can kind of see what I'm doing. It's probably easier to learn this technique with an angled brush, but I have done it so much I can use a straight brush or an angled brush. It's all about making sure you don't have too much paint on your brush, and then you hold it so it bends just above the bristles and you pull it in a very straight line along your crease or wherever you want that line to be. It takes a lot of practice on something you don't care about, like just a piece of paper, but I know y'all can learn it. After I got done painting the entire surface, I went back over it, pulling my bristles all the way from one end of the edge of the book to the other. That way the bristles don't just stop in the middle of the book where you can see your brush strokes. I realized I got some paint on the binding, and something cool about Debbie's DIY paint is that you can clean it off after it's dry because it's water soluble. I just used a damp towel with no soap to clean it up, but that means that since it's water soluble, you do have to seal your project when you're done using Debbie's DIY paint. So normally I don't open a book all the way like this because it would ruin the binding, but this binding is kind of trashed on the inside, so I'm not too concerned about it. I wanted to show you this though for two reasons. First, it's easier to paint the back if the book is laying down flat, but I'll show you another way to do that later in the video. Secondly, it's another way to get a good straight line if you're not great at making straight lines. All you do is go right up to where that binding starts, and your paint won't show because it's underneath where it just starts to raise. For part of the decor of this book stack, I will be using Iron Orchid Designs' new paint inlay from their 2025 summer release called Floriography. A paint inlay is a lot like a transfer, except instead of using ink, they use paint. So when you put this paint inlay on your wet paint, as it dries, it becomes part of your paint. To prep the surface I'm working on today, after the first layer dried, I added another layer of Debbie's faded burlap. I sprayed it with my mister to make sure it would be really smooth without a lot of brush strokes and to make sure it would take that paint inlay into it. Again, I went all the way across the book to make sure that my brush strokes didn't end in the middle. I've already sprayed my paint inlay with my water mister. I want it to be damp before I add it to the paint. I make sure that the paint side is down. When you spray that paper with water, you can't tell which side is the front and the back, so make sure you know which side the paint is on before you lay it onto your object. To make sure that the paint from the inlay gets into the paint on the surface, you want to make sure you press it hard enough, but you don't smear it. So some people use a brayer, other people use a towel, and you can use your hand. For this one, I'm just using my hand. I want to make sure the paint from the paint inlay gets all the way down into the crevices of the fabric the book cover is made from. Let everything get very dry, and you'll know it's dry because that paint inlay is no longer see-through. It looks a lot like it did before you sprayed it the first time. Right before you are ready to lift off the paint inlay, spray it again, and then go over it again with another cloth to make sure that that water is all the way into the paint. If you don't get your paint inlay wet before you lift it off of your object, then the paint inlay and some of the paint from your project will come off. Now you get to peel back that paper, and I am so sorry the entire book isn't in the frame. I bumped my camera with my ginormous noggin. Y'all, when you do a paint inlay right, it's like you have struck gold. For the middle book, I thought I was going to do much of the same, but I knew I didn't want those words to be there, so I was also going to paint the binding. I did change my mind though and decided to paint the entire book black, because when you were looking down from the top and seeing that black and faded burlap, it was just awkward and kind of too busy. I had a lot of busyness going on the top book, so I decided to make that middle book just straight faded burlap all the way across. When I was done, I put 3 paint inlays on the binding. I just picked 3 different inlays that together looked like the title of the book and the rest of the binding information. And now all 3 of them are dry, so I'm ready to remove the paper. Oh, that is so rewarding. Next, I want to show you this, and then I want to show you this. My regular viewers know that I'm not just willy-nilly painting books like they don't matter, but I want the new folks here to understand that as well. Not only did I climb over the top of a dumpster with no door to rescue these books, it had been raining on these books. It was so sad too because they were from a clockmaker and there were a bunch of books and they were all very old. It was too late to salvage some of them because the rain had gotten so thick on them they were waterlogged all the way through, but I did save a couple and this was one of them. I did flatten out this cover with a hammer and a piece of wood, but it was still a little bit bumpy and I had to use 3 coats of paint on it, and that wasn't just because of the bumps. That was because the blue kept coming through. I don't know what the chemistry is behind why books that have been previously waterlogged might bleed through new paint, but that's what happened. To keep those colors from bleeding through, I could have used Salvation solution, but I didn't know what was happening until I was already done letting the second coat dry. So I had to go back over the places where I painted 3 times. By the time I added the 3rd coat, it did work. There were still a few places where some of the paint ran through, but I didn't really care because my other book will be covering up those places. Not only does it look good, but you can still open it up and read this book. So even though it is painted, I did save it. Next, I'm doing something I haven't tried before with a book stack. I'm adding the florals with my glue gun. You can buy these flowers and my glue sticks I get in bulk from Amazon. I will leave a link for both of those in the description. If you buy anything from Amazon by using one of my links to get there, they will give me a small compensation but won't raise your price. If you do decide to get floral from Amazon, make sure to really look at the description and all of the pictures. There's a bunch of different sizes, styles, colors, and prices. To get a really good assortment, make sure to look at that picture that shows the different styles with their sizes. In one package, you can get an assortment of all the different colors of the rainbow, or you can concentrate on one color, like pink or purple. You can get exactly what you want. I still have that awful placement of my book not being all the way in the frame, so again, I apologize for that. But I think you can get the gist of what I'm doing. I started by putting the flowers in the inside upper corner and the outside lower corner. I laid out flat flowers and poofy flowers, different colors and different shades of the same colors until I found what I liked. Then I just started working away from those. For some of the flowers, I just cut off that little tiny stem that goes in a piece of wire that you might use in an arrangement, and I glued that right onto the book. For other flowers, I took that completely off and disassembled the flower and put it back together with glue in between each layer of petals. With some of the flowers that were on the edge of the book, I wrapped them around and glued them so they would stay curved. I kept adding flowers until I got the arrangement I was hoping for. I also added a small arrangement on the bottom of the binding of the book that will be on the bottom of the stack. There's really not much more to explain, so I'm just going to sit back and let you watch while I finish the flower arrangements. Well, I mean, you know, the part of the book you can actually see. Oops. This might go without saying, but if you are using a high temp glue gun or glue that might burn your fingers, make sure to protect them. You want to put pretty good pressure on those petals when you're putting them in layers. That way the glue will come up through the fabric from which the petals are made. Right here I'm just tucking some smaller flowers under the larger ones, and that way there's not such a gap between the large flowers and the book. And now I'm sealing everything with Debbie's liquid patina. I probably should have done this before I put the flowers on, I simply didn't think of that. I sell Debbie's DIY paint products in my booth in upstate South Carolina, but I don't ship. If you aren't close enough to shop in person, you can go to Debbie's website with a link she has provided, and she'll give me a small compensation for that, but won't raise your price. You'll find that link in the description below. You want to make sure to seal the faded burlap and the paint inlays. Sometimes I use a spray sealer for this because you can smear that paint inlay. I felt pretty good about it because it had dried for a whole day before I added this. I made sure that after I tucked in that liquid patina underneath the flower petals, I went back and made all of my lines go the same way. And then I remembered to add it all along the places where the faded burlap were, even if you couldn't see them, because if that gets even a little bit wet, that paint can come off super easy. Before I tied up my book stack, I wanted to add one more little thing. It's a brooch, but I'm not sure if it is just a little too much, so I thought y'all could decide. I only used a little bit of glue so I can take it off if you think I shouldn't keep it. Let me know in the comments. This is not the finished project. This is another what do you think picture. Here's what happened. I finished up my project and I brought it in the house to do my staging pictures. So like the thumbnail, the pictures you're watching now, the things you'll see at the end of the video. And I realized I did not film the part where I tied up my book stack. And I couldn't do that to y'all again. There's too many times where I don't have some important direction because I forgot to film it. So I took it back out to my she shack and I'm retying it while I film it. But of course I changed my mind. This picture is tied up the same way and I added pip beads instead of a burlap bow. I thought they would go really well with the gold writing on the bindings of the books, but it was just a little bit off. So I started retying it again. And here's what I came up with for my final pictures. Now you tell me what you think. Does it need more? I felt like after I tried it with one string, it was so good, so I left it that way. And the only reason I'm using one string here is because I was measuring to see how long to cut 4 strings to do the same thing again that I had in the original after pictures of my project. But I liked it so much with one, I left it that way. This is just some string I got at the Amazon return store we have here. It's called Bin Time and it was 75-cent day, so I got a pretty good deal. All I did was figure out how to get it under the petals of some of the flowers. Now you could do your flowers so that this goes straight across, but I don't like that. I don't want it to look perfect. I want it to look like somebody just stacked these books together and randomly tied a string around them. I wrapped the string over the top and the bottom of the book, and then in the back, I just twisted it around itself one time and I brought it back up around the sides to the top of the top book. I put each end of the string underneath the middle string, and then I tied them together one time. Now, here's a cool little trick. Instead of using your thumb or pointer finger when you're trying to tie a really tight knot, use your pinky. That way you can still use the rest of all of your fingers on that hand to actually tie the knot. You wouldn't believe how long it took me to figure that out. Let's just say I'm pushing 60, and it was yesterday. I tied a simple bow like one would do when they're tying their shoelaces, and I pulled it really tight. Then I trimmed the ends off, and that was it. Y'all, I am so smitten with this book stack, and I hope you are too. Bookstack number 5. Bookstack number 6. We all know that no season or holiday is complete without a bookstack from Heather. So let's make one. I am using Debbie's Design Diary Cottage Colors in white linen. And this is a 3-in-1 paint. It has the base, well, the primer, the paint, and the top coat all in one. So it's a one step and you're done. I did give this 2 coats, letting the first one dry in between. This is just a Reader's Digest book from 1981. Sometimes they sell for around $4 or $5, but I don't think this one, it didn't have anything in it that I even recognized. That's not saying a lot, because in 1981, I was more concerned about Sean Cassidy and the Bay City Rollers and The Boy Next Door than I was what Reader's Digest was putting out in their book compilations. But I don't think it's too valuable, so it's okay to paint. I made sure to get that paint around the inside of the covers on the front and the back, so it wouldn't have that green. It was kind of a pretty book, but I need red, white, and blue. I'm adorning the binding with different collections of Iron Orchid Designs transfers. 2 of them are from the latest summer 2026 release, and that includes the Belgravia with all these cute little plates and teacups. They also have a lot of small flowers, and that's what I'm looking for. And Anthenium, or Antonium, whatever. I am using some of the foil from that. I want to make it clear that I have tried IOD transfers on just about everything, including my hands by accident, that part. And by far, the easiest, best surface I have ever applied them to is Debbie's Cottage Colors. This paint is, I don't know, it's like a magnet or something. It just goes on there and boom, you're done. I took my time going back and forth between different designs, and I really wanted it to be red, white, and blue, but not just red, white, and blue. So I chose flowers that were mostly that. And then, like, this one had, it was a little bit too pink. So I can't even remember what book I went through, y'all. I just dug out a lot of my scraps, and it might have been, I think maybe I used some from Madeline, and I might have even used Saint Germain. No, well, I can't remember. Anyway, I found some more brighter, deeper reds and a few more blues. And I also found some more white flowers. And I just layered those all over the place. I also added the foil at the top. I used one little square or rectangle that I had left over from a previous project. And then I found some words that I put randomly all over by the flowers, and I can't remember what one that was from. I believe it was from the spring 2026 release. It might have been Flora Greca, and it no, I think it was the one with the castles and the flat Persephone. Um Saint Sunwin, which I call Saint Owen. I also added a little bit of foil to the bottom. Because I was using scraps, some of them had a very straight cut, so along those edges, I tried to add little pieces of greenery or other floral just to make it look like it was more natural. I wish I would have thought to take thorough pictures before I put the books together, but I totally forgot. I was just so excited to have red, white, and blue books that I didn't have to paint them all. The first one, as my mother would call, is a primer, but I call it primer of figure skating. I believe it's from the late 50s, early 60s, and I found it in a dumpster. And the red one, I think a friend gave me that. And it's called This Means Everlasting Life. These books are worth maybe $4 to $5 each online. The top one might be worth a little bit more, but the blue one has a big piece of fabric missing on the cover. And some people might like that because that was back when books used real wood for the covers. So you can kind of see the wood underneath that. It actually looks pretty cool, but a lot of people would just think, oh, there's a big hole in that. I found that beige ribbon in a collection on the side of the road, but the velvet ribbon I bought on Amazon, and I will leave a link for that. I usually buy great big long lengths of ribbon for colors and styles that I really want. But if you want something that just gives your project a pop and you don't need a lot of one certain color, I really recommend looking into the Amazon collections of different velvet ribbons. And you can get them in different widths as well, but they're not very long. They're like a yard each or maybe only 24 inches each. If you buy something from Amazon by using my link to get there, they will give me a small compensation, but they won't raise your price. I did not glue down the ribbon or the florals. I didn't glue the pages together because I thought people might want to actually read these books. So on the tag that I put them in the shop, I wrote that they are not glued together. So when somebody unties them, the floral bouquet is going to kind of fall apart. I didn't want somebody that maybe isn't crafty enough to put the flowers back together to go home and untie it to read it and be like, ah, my bouquet. I want them to know that might happen so they can be prepared. This was super easy and it was really fun. I believe I put $17 on this in the booth. In the comments, let me know, do y'all like to make book stacks? And if you do you make them match the seasons or the holidays? It's something I get a lot of joy from doing. So did y'all have a favorite? I think mine was the green one with the clementine transfers. It was just, I don't know, it popped and it sold really quick. In fact, all of those book stacks, except for the one that has the bouquet with the little Tupperware butter top, all of them sold. Seems like that one would have sold because it's so unique, but I guess people like what they like. I totally gave myself a bug to go make some more, so I'm going to head off and do that. But Mama and I do have another patriotic video coming out this Friday. I hope you will join us then. Until then, we hope you have a wonderful week. And as always, we hope you are blessed. Bye. Meow. 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 Hi, Miss Meow. Hi, Miss Meow. He's a big kitty. Hi, kitty. Meow.